what's going on, guys? Ahmed here, back with another video, and I want to apologize to you all. I know that this video is taking a while. I'm here today to review the new Rock Marciano record, and similar to some other projects, I think this has been one of the hardest projects to review for a couple of reasons. I think number one, I'm really new to Rock Marciano, and so his sound is really growing on me, and so I kind of it's been an interesting task to kind of divorce what I want from music and what Rock Marciano necessarily supplies, because I think that while I may not be a fan of everything, as you will see in this video, I do have a lot of respect for what he puts out and the way that he goes about making music. But with that being said, this is going to be my review of Nothing Bigger Than the Program by Rock Marciano. Let's get straight into it. So this is a collab album by Griselda, I would say Griselda affiliate, rapper and producer Rock Marciano, along with Jay Worthy, who is from California. Going into this, I was, like I just said, very much held Rock Marciano in high regards as probably a maybe top 10 rapper producer of all time, given he definitely is a real spitter with it, and he produces his very own incredible and unique beats, and has a pretty consistent catalog. I was definitely looking forward to seeing what he had to offer. And this was a really interesting experience. And I overall really liked the project. So let's get straight into it. Let's first talk about the production. And this is the easiest amazing of my life. Rock Marciano is such a strong producer because he has a style and he sticks to it. The way that he brings in elements of older school sounds, such as like 70s funk and jazz, really is transformative, and you can tell that people like Q-Tip and Tribe Called Quest in general are absolutely who he is the student of. But he blends it and does it in a way that is almost this parlor music. He has a much more lo-fi aesthetic because he's not as concerned with, making a huge mainstream splash. He can really engage in this more subdued, more complex and intricate soundscape that's super interesting. The saxophones, the pianos, the guitars on some of these records is absolutely incredible, and he's got that signature no drum style, which really lends him a unique voice in the production landscape. It almost feels like a genre fusion, honestly, with the jazz rap, and I feel like he absolutely does it at some of the highest level we've seen in hip-hop history, and this album is no different. As well as, we'll get into this into the flow perspective, but he also his production complements his rapping voice so well, being subdued and very chill. I think for me personally, it's been something to get you kind of used to, because me personally, I'm used to more exciting, more rapid fire in your face production, and he doesn't really provide that. But I think that for people who like more chill music, people who enjoy more of that subdued lo-fi music, and who don't always need the big banger hit at all times, Rock Marciano is definitely up your alley. And his production, while not as like in your face, is no less is arguably more intricate, and brings in so many different sounds, so many different instruments that I think are lacking from hip hop today. And I think, as opposed to instruments that we hear from other songs, such as, like, in my opinion, and I'm sorry to say this, but what I think is like the very cheap flute that we hear from somebody like a Future, Rock Marciano's production very much calls back to the roots, and, as I said, Tribe Called Quest, with how live and quality and authentic the instrumentation is. And so I definitely really enjoyed the production on this album, and I think it was definitely, for me, the most eye-catching and noticeable part. So I'm going to absolutely give that an amazing. The writing, I'm going to also give an amazing, and this is where stuff gets really interesting, because this was definitely the hardest thing for me to really pinpoint. But I think that this was a collab album between Jay Worthy and Rock Marciano. And I think oftentimes we get collab albums with people who don't quite do the collab album concept justice. And the reason I say that is because I feel like they work, they try to meet in the middle, right? And while that makes for a more consistent soundscape, it means that we don't really get to see the heights of either person. And also it means that the writing is fairly consistent throughout. Think 21 and Drake. Besides a few tracks here and there, we don't really get to see 21 to his true murderous extent. And besides a few tracks such as Middle in the Ocean, we don't get to see Drake in his truest introspective state. They kind of meet in this hit making in the middle bag, and it kind of, creates content that is just good. But what's interesting is that Rock Marciano and Jay Worthy are very different writers. Jay Worthy very much with the storytelling, very much with the, hey, this is what was going on in my Cali blocks, and this is what I had to go through, and this happened with this guy, and I had to deal with this shootout. And then on the flip side, you have Rock Marciano, who may not have stories in the same way, but absolutely comes through with very strong technical rapping, very intense and witty punchlines that are definitely dope to hear. And the thing is that, like, you kind of have to count both of this in your favor. And while it is somewhat unfair because, while it is somewhat unfair because it is two rappers doing two different things, I think that is what you're supposed to get. In a perfect world, collab albums should be better than solo albums because you should be able to take advantage of both artists' strong suits. And I think that's really what's on display here. And I really, really like that. And so that was a really dope surprise. I really enjoyed the punchlines and, like I said, that technical rapping from Rock Marciano. I do wish that both of them had a little bit more range in their raps. I definitely feel like those two individually are just great writers. Again, because of the lack of range, and also because I feel like the way that they approach love and, like, romance in general is a bit lacking because they allow, I think, the street persona to kind of taint the full expression of their romance. But overall, they're still great writers, and when they come together, they make something truly amazing because you have this diverse set of feats writing wise, where again you have the storytelling of Jay Worthy, and then you have the punchlines of Rock Marciano, and it was really interesting. It also gave kind of a cool contrast. And Jay Worthy, we'll get into this more in the flow section. Well, matter of fact, we'll just go straight into it. So I would say that the writing was amazing. The flows I'm going to give a great. And this I've kind of gone back and forth with because on one hand, if you ask me personally, I am not the biggest fan of their flows just because I feel like I really like, more energetic, more quick time, in your face, bow, like all that type of stuff. Or, more catchy melodic flows such as what A Boogie offers. But I think that for this album, again, it was a very lo-fi parlor music album. And with the flows, with the more subdued nature of Rock Marciano, but still that kind of hardened rasp that he brings, it was a beautiful performance for the album and for this album's vision, as well as Rock Marciano giving us that bit of a louder, more, Cali raps. You could definitely, what was really cool was you could hear how strong their opposing accents were. And that was really interesting and gave a dynamic performance, even though I personally feel like I would have wished to hear a little bit more excitement. Again, similar to the production, not the production, similar to the writing, not getting a perfect. I think the flows here really only suffer because it feels like they often approach each song pretty similarly from a flow perspective, very slow, very meditative. And it would have been nice to hear them kind of switch it up. But and I will say that I consider it flows and chemistry for this one. Their chemistry was really, really strong and provided a lot of contrast. And even though I definitely feel like if it was one or the other, it definitely would have been a mid. But because their chemistry is so strong and it provides enough of a contrast, it definitely elevates it to great in my eyes. Definitely really, really interesting contrast between their performances. I just wish that they would have, switched up a little bit per song. You know what I mean? Especially those more exciting songs, especially those more exciting beats, such as "Wake Up," for example. The features were just okay. This may sound a bit harsh, but honestly, I think I might go with a mid, to be honest, for the features. Not because any of the features were like abhorrently bad, except for a couple of the choruses that they did. I think there was one called "The Plug." that I really just wasn't a fan of the chorus on "Nigga, I'm the plug." Like, stop. But I think my problem with the features here were similar to my problems with the features on Won't He Do It, and the problems with the features I had on Tana Talk 4, which is that I just feel like one of the big problems with the features is that sometimes Griselda really can get into their own lane a little bit too much, and what can happen is that like the features don't truly offer something new, right? A lot of times I felt with the features, one of the things and issues I talked about in Tana Talk 4, and it really exemplified itself on Weekend in Perry, is that while all the features did do their thing, I don't feel like they necessarily offered a different sound or lyrical content that was new from the prior artist, which made them feel not as needed. And so as a result, I feel like the features don't really hit because they weren't necessary. And I felt that way with a lot of Rock Marciano's features, on top of the fact that I feel like there weren't as many, in my opinion, standout performances as there were on Tana Talk 4. And so I'm going to go with, we'll say mid for now, although it may change in the future. Overall musical execution, I'm going to go with great again, man. I really feel like, again, while I'm not gonna be bumping everything off this album, it really fulfills its vision. It's a wonderful album experience, and definitely feel like is a great contrast to all of the drill and sort of loud trap sounds that we're hearing nowadays. And is a nice change of pace. You know what I mean? And so absolutely, I think that for committing to its soundscape and being a good contrast to a lot of the music that we hear in New York and in general right now, I think that it absolutely deserves the great rating. For me personally, like I said, I really would wish to see a bit more excitement, a bit more diversity, and a bit more punch to some of his music. But if that's not what Rock Marciano is, he doesn't have to be. This is all just my own personal opinion and how I perceive his music. And overall, man, I thought this album was great, man. I thought this album was really great. I know I've been saying that about a lot of albums recently. This year has been just kind of okay for music. A lot of goods, a lot of greats. Nothing truly amazing besides the Conway stuff and some other stuff I'm gonna talk about a little bit later down in the month. But yeah, overall, really enjoyed this record. And let me know what y'all thought of this record in the comments below. With that being said, peace, y'all.